B. B can probably go with D up in A, but above D. And then F is an S tier, for sure.
Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey chapter 202. It is the last day of the week, aka the Vampire Killer workout. I'm on my way to the gym right now and I'm feeling pretty good. It is the last day of the week, which means the weekend is almost here, and I'm very thankful for that. And I'm feeling very tired, but we still got to get this workout in. But anyways, to the main subject matter today. The tier list for sins, the 7 deadly sins. Now, why am I doing this? Because of course everything on the internet has to be on a tier list, but that's one. But two, I wanted to just talk about them in general altogether, and maybe some reasonings as to why I wanted to talk about them and things like that. I'm very curious about certain aspects of them, and they're always something that's always there but never really said and or given in necessarily all media today. They were very persuasive in many different forms of media back in the day. There was like that famous movie Seven, which was a pretty good movie, I have to say, but that was just one example of them. And usually there are movies that are based off of one or the other, which I've probably had multiple examples of in here. But I wanted to just talk about them individually and then talk about them in general as a whole, because there are a lot of different reasons, and I'll probably get into some reasons as to why I wanted to talk about them on the inside. But for now, I'll say this: I will probably end up making a little tier list video as well with this, so I don't know how I'm going to insert it or how this is going to go, but future Oscar is going to have to do a little bit of work. I'm going to have to figure that one out when we get there, but that will be whenever we get there. I think if I'm going to say this, I'll rank them in the sense that the lowest will be some that not necessarily will ruin your life, but can ruin your life, to immediately will probably ruin your life and or other consequences to it, you know, other things like that as well. There are many factors to it, so it is what it is. But with that being said, I will see you on the inside. Alright, so started this day off with neck curls, which were pretty good. But anyways, so back to the main subject matter at hand, the sins tier list. So this one's going to be like a video within a video, kind of. It's going to be a little bit different. So I've decided to make a tier list on tiermaker.com, because that's the one place where you can do it. And by make, I mean just customize somebody else's that they've already made. I decided to do this in 4 different categories, since there's only 7 of them, so there doesn't necessarily need to be that many differentiating levels to it, because realistically there's no real point. So I decided to do 4 categories. We have worse, awful, bad, and can live with ish. I had to add the ish part because sometimes you can live with these things and it's not necessarily the most awful of them all. I like to think of it in the sense of the general outline of things, in that, you know, if you can you be in the center of it? Can you really live your life without it at all, and or with a little bit of it be not the worst in your life? So that's how I've kind of broken it down. I was going to go in the order that I released the videos, but that doesn't even necessarily matter at this point. So anyways, to the tier list. Let's start off with sloth. Now, I've discussed sloth before. Sloth can be terrible, but sloth is something that I feel like many people can live with. It's not necessarily the worst thing. I think that for some people it is a terrible thing and it can lead to a bunch of things. But I feel like it is one of those things that if you are on the sloth-ish side, you can get pretty far in life. You don't have to necessarily be damned to hell really with it, because you can go around it and kind of get your way through things. If you are, let's say, in the horseshoe, if you're in the middle of it and you're sometimes lazy, I don't think it's the end of the world. But also, if you go into the extreme, you could grind yourself out on one end, and if you go to the other end, you're going to be so lazy that you're just going to let nature take over and basically just die a slow death, basically. After that, we have gluttony. Gluttony, I'll have to say, is probably in awful territory. Not because I would say that it can consume people, but as somebody who used to be a glutton, I can understand how debilitating it can be, and how if you go on the side of gluttony, like to the end side of it, you can really mess yourself up for a long time. And it is not easy to hold off any poundage at all. It is something that takes forever to get rid of, and you have to put so much work and effort into getting rid of all the stuff, and food is so fucking fucking good. So it's very, 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 very tough of a challenge to do. And even on the other side, if you're not a glutton at all, where you don't even eat anything, that's just starvation. You're going to have problems there too. But if you're somewhere in the middle where you're just eating the occasional big ass meal, then I think you're fine. I don't think it's that bad. But if you go to the other side of it, the real extreme side of it, it can be very debilitating and very hard to get through life with that. Obviously, all of these are like that, but this one is up there in awfulness. To the next one, envy. I'd say envy is probably in the bad section, because envy isn't good by any stretch of the imagination, but for some people envy can actually be a weird like boost of wanting to kind of get through their life in a different way, or just like the envy of having somebody else might give them an idea of what they want to do, or like a boost in their life and stuff like that. It's not the worst of them all, but it is something that isn't good, because like I said before, it can blind you and leave you into a place that doesn't really belong to you, and think this would be just bad, but not anything that could destroy your life type deal. Speaking of that, the next one, wrath, makes our first worst of the list. Wrath, the worst one. Why? Because it's quick, it's swift, it can easily come in at any moment, at any time, anywhere, and things can turn on a dime. I mean, literally, you can feel the wrath of somebody come as quickly as 0 to 100 in a matter of moments. You could literally be living your life, and then the next second of your life, you could be dead, or somebody is dead. You know what I mean? Like, so it'd probably be the worst one because of how quickly and how ruthlessly it is when it comes basically into your life. And if you aren't even taking it to 100 every single time, even dealing with somebody who's wrathful, who's like angry and all that other stuff in any sense of the fashion, is probably the worst thing you'd have to deal with. If you are the wrathful one, other people have to watch out for you, and that is a whole host of terribleness that you have to deal with, that you are just kind of doing to yourself. You're pushing everybody away. There's no redeeming, or at least like some silver lining to it. You're fucked if you're doing any of this type of stuff. And then we have greed. Greed, I would say I would put in bad, because greed, although not good, although you could in theory live with some greed, I feel like nowadays it is a more tendency to be more on the greedy side than not, which isn't good, obviously. But also, I don't think being greedy isn't the worst of them all. It definitely could be worse, but I think that it's not good. And even being in the middle where, you know, you're not necessarily charitable, but you're kind of keeping all of your stuff and trying to get as much as you can, is something that you kind of have to be in order to get ahead in this world. Unfortunately, it's not good. You have to be somewhat charitable at certain points in your life. I feel like it's just bad. I don't think it's anything next level. I think for lust, I want to say it goes up with awful. I think that realistically, I could probably make the argument for it going into worst, but within itself, if you go to one end or the other, specifically the one end where you were taking it to the max and to the extreme, life ruination, genuine life ruination, and it's a slow burn to that. It's just like gluttony almost, in that it takes a while to get there, but then you could go into a dark rabbit hole that there's no real getting out of. We're talking about different types of addiction and things like that, and it could really, really, really make you just go down that rabbit hole of just depravity. It can be something that you have to watch out for a lot, especially in today's society, because it's everywhere. And finally, we have pride. I think pride, I'm going to give it to just bad. I don't think it's the worst, and I don't think it's necessarily off, because I feel like a lot of people are very much 1 or 100 with this. I don't think they're very much in the middle, and I think that that is something that is very underappreciated now. I feel like more people should have pride in themselves or in the things that they work on. I don't think that you can have too much pride. That is something that can happen, especially with social media, giving you like that weird boost. But I also feel like there are a lot of people that aren't proud of themselves. They aren't necessarily having these feelings. So I don't think it's bad if you have too much of it, but it's also not something that you shouldn't have at least none of. And I think you can get away with some pride in your life, even if it's a very minimum amount. And I think that most people should have just some pride in themselves and then their work, so then that way they can have some backbone really in this world. I think that the ones that are bad in this category is the sense that you kind of need to have it in this world in order to get a little bit further. The other three, awful and worst, they're just life ruiners. They can really just take you down and throw you into the pits of hell, basically. And then sloth. I mean, man, come on, someone. Everybody wants to be lazy every once in a while, so I can't even argue with that one too hard. I get it. Some people grind themselves into a T to the point where they can't even be sloth-like, and that's a whole other issue on a whole other day. But yes, there it is. Thank you for coming to my tier list. Now back to the car. And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed. None. Exercises skipped. Also none. Got everything in, thankfully. I was thinking so hard there for a minute, I did not say anything. So that's why I was laughing, because I was like, I'm just recording myself, like just sitting here. So that was pretty funny. I'm thinking of a future episode I'm gonna have to do, but that's a whole other story for a whole other day. Whoa, buddy, where are you going? That's the second time I've been almost hitting this fucking garage on a fucking last day of the week. What the fuck? Back to the main subject matter at hand. The 7 Deadly Sins tier list. Now, the main reason why I wanted to do this tier list generally is because tier list gets views, but no, also for real, it's because I just wanted to kind of compare and contrast them and try to get it all together and put a nice little bow on this entire series that I've been doing for what is a better part of a year. So I just wanted to do that and kind of finish it off and kind of tie it all together in one a nice little video. Because the main reason why I wanted to do this entire series in the first place is because I wanted to look at something that I would say, generally speaking, is out there and has been out there for a while. I think we see examples of every single thing all the time, everywhere in popular culture, social media, movies, TV, video games, personal life. You know, you see these examples of these people doing any of the 7 deadly sins and letting it ruin their lives in one way or another. And it isn't necessarily like reiterated much when people do that, but you can see it a lot in different places and different things, and how it could really truly ruin lives. And you got to be careful about it, you know, really think about it. People will ignore something that was created thousands of years ago, thinking that it is no longer applicable to us, when in reality it's always been applicable to us. And just because it's 1,000 years old doesn't mean that's necessarily that far off. That's only 10 generations behind you, which isn't that much if you really think about it, okay? That's only like 7 people behind you, which is nothing in comparison to the long scheme of things. I mean, if they have a grandparent and then they have a child, that's 3 right there. You know what I mean? So it's not even that far off. And there's some people that have greats and then great-greats and that are still somehow alive. You know, this isn't necessarily that far off. And at that point, you're 5 off. You're only 5 off from where these things were created, you know? That's not that far behind. It even goes further than that. So these are some things that were created by something, somewhere, for some reason, and they have been applicable ever since their creation. And I feel like something that people tend to ignore because it is old, and, you know, it's an old idea, or it isn't as shiny as something new or whatever, like the Myers-Briggs or whatever. I just wanted to say that because I hate the Myers-Briggs, but we'll have that discussion for a different day. But it is something that we do, or people do all the time, but they don't really think about it. They don't necessarily see the error of their own ways. They don't really think and self-reflect into what is causing these things to consume their lives, and instead are ignoring it and letting them be sucked into the poison and really ruin themselves. It's just like, it's astonishing, and I feel like there are more people that should pay attention to these things, because maybe, hey, I'm doing a little too much of X, I'm doing a little too much of Y, I'm doing a little too much of Z, whichever of the 7 deadly sins, it could save your life, because you could actually, you know, just stop it, put an end to it, maybe figure out why you're doing it, and try to change it out. Some people are just beyond being saved. That's just going to happen regardless of whether you want them to or not. Maybe they are smart enough to realize that they are, but they just don't give a fuck, and that's a whole other story. But at least think about what you're doing. Think about what controls you, why these things might control you, how they control you, and if they don't, how are you going to make sure that they aren't going to control you in the future? How do you know if a little taste of pussy isn't going to make you fucking lust over every single woman in the world? You know what I mean? You got to be very careful about these things. Just a small little sip of something that you like or don't like might ruin you, but you got to be careful about it, and you got to watch out, because if you don't know yourself, then you don't know what's going to happen to you. So you got to be very, very careful about that. But with that being said, some me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. This one is a nice little bow to a series that I can finally say I have finished. After 1 year of this channel, I have finished a series. Every other series has been ongoing and will probably be ongoing for a while because each episode or each subject matter is very vast and vague, and I have not even touched the surface of many of them. This one I could now put at rest and say I did it. I covered the 7 deadly sins and put them in a nice tier list. So with that being said, tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thanks again for watching. Keep it heavy, stay safe out there, stay warm out there, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!